loa, ngā mihi mahana kia koutou, no mai, haere mai, piki mai, kaki mai. Good afternoon and very warm welcome. Oh, good Lord. Councillor Nixon is upside down. Okay. A very warm welcome. Could we start, when Councillor Nixon sits on his chair, could we start with a karakia, please? I invite Councillor Hickey to lead us in karakia. Thank you.
Tēnā koe, Your Worship, koutou kua tai mai nei tiniwa. I will open up with our karakia. Me noi tātou. E te ansua, manakitia mai mātou, me o mātou mahi tēnei wā. I runga I tō ingoa tapu. Amen.
Thank you, ngā mihi nui. Thank you, Councillor Hickey. And good afternoon, everybody. And today we have a very important decision to make on the future of our local waters done well. I have no apologies or leave of absence received. Is there any call for leave of absence today? No. Any conflicts of interest as they arise, could I ask councillors to address them in the usual way? Thank you. Item 4, there's no minutes to be confirmed today. Item 5, local waters done well decision. This is a very important decision. It's transformational change on looking at the future of how we deliver water services for our community. I'd like to start this item off with a presentation by the officers to just take us through what we have been working on for the last, some of us 5 years, some of us more recently, on just recapping, particularly welcome to any of our community who may have joined us today to understand this process that we've been on and take us through this process. Kia ora. Thank you very much, Mr. Watson.
Just wait on technology coming along with us. Yes. So today we want to basically take you through the journey that we have sort of been on. We'll look at the consultation outcomes, some legislative changes that have been recommended from Select Committee to the bill. We'll look at where we're at with the other councils, and there has been some movements in that, which actually ultimately has impacted on the heads of agreement, certainly relative to what was in the papers. I do believe you received an updated and the most recent copy this morning of the heads of agreement. We'll give you a quick update on where we are with the Water Services Delivery Plan, which we need to present to the DIA on the 3rd of September, Mana Whenua update, and then talk around the establishment board. It will be a tag team between myself and Mr. Ozo, when we do this. So essentially the journey so far, and for Hastings District, that really started in 2016 when we had the Havelock North sort of water crisis. And then in 2018, the councils came together, they commissioned Morrison Lowe to actually look at how best can we deliver water services across the region. And the outcome from all that work was actually, it was a multi-council organisation that came out there sort of as the best. And that then all morphed through into the Labour government's Three Waters sort of coming in, and again looking at multi-council COs. That was repealed by the national government, where local water done well was put in place. We started off with that because the national government were bringing in a lot of changes. They were identifying financial and investment sufficiency as one of the key measures, based on the fact that their perception was a lot of underinvestment in water assets over the years. They were bringing in standards, both for water quality and design standards for the actual assets themselves. So we did all the modelling, a whole new phrases were sort of introduced there, as well as a water services bill was introduced. On April the 29th, the council took a decision to go out to consult on a preferred model of coming together amongst the regions with a multi-council water services delivery as being the best way to deliver. And then that brings us to where we're at today. And the first decision that we will have today is for Council to approve a joint water services organisation with Napier and with Central as the way forward. And again, this will not be the final decision. This will not be the last time we talk about local waters around the council table, but this is the first major decision in relation to that. Now, why the regional WSCCO? Essentially, there are a number of different benefits. One, if you look to the right-hand side, it was the cheapest. The black line we have, that reflects the pricing path for Hastings relative to a single Hastings CCO or a single Hastings business unit. Definitely we can see substantially the lowest price path sort of coming through. But at the same time, there are a lot of non-financial benefits that people were essentially looking at. We felt working together, we would get maximum efficiency. We would get gains from just the sheer size, pulling everything together. We would be able to work smarter with our suppliers, keeping a continuous flow of work, much better for capital planning and for delivery. It would make ourselves a much more attractive place, one, for our staff, giving them a very clear career path, but also to attract new staff. We know standards, legislative requirements will change, economic requirements will change. So using the regional gave us much more flexibility, it made us more adaptable than any of the other models that we saw. There was opportunities in how we could work with Mana Whenua across the region, having one voice sort of coming through sort of there. And then just an opportunity for much broader network considerations sort of there as well. And all the ratios, all the data that we looked at, the only place where the regional model wasn't seen as being so good is the degree from the community was extended. And that was always going to be always coming from direct engagement through council. But there are provisions in the law that will enable us to still have some level of community engagement and ask the water organisation to ensure that that will still be the case. They also need to have a significance and an engagement policy on areas that they will need to also go out and consult on. So after April the 29th, we went out through May, June, and then we had hearings sort of through July on the consultation. We got over 1,000 submissions. Now, we believe that is, outside maybe the major metro areas, that is the largest amount of submissions received by any council sitting there. And 83% were in favour of going with the preferred option of the regional. And when you split it up between the water connections, then again, very strong sort of focus on we want to continue. But through the whole process, there was a lot of good feedback that sort of came through. We've tried to split this up, and if you look more at the left-hand side of the slide, that's where people said yes. On the right-hand side, more for when people were against it. Some of the ones towards the bottom, they were quite mixed. So obviously people looked at the cost efficiencies, and they saw that that's a really good way to sort of work through. They liked the idea of regional collaboration. So there. A lot of discussion on water metering, so they will only pay for what they are using. That came through as quite a strong theme there. They liked the idea of independent and professional governance, sitting over what is quite a complex sort of area, and the opportunity for the improved service delivery, improved infrastructure outcomes. I think the feedback on Mana Whenua engagement was quite mixed. A lot for, a lot against. Privatisation, a lot of fear of privatisation. Some definitely saw this step as being one step towards privatisation. There are provisions in the legal structure for that. We are also intending, or we would be recommending as officers, that does go into the constitution, which will be discussed at a later date of the new organisation, just to give that additional prevention or protection against that. Another major area, and this is something this council has also been very, very concerned on, is the debt level of what's left at council. We will have more headroom. That is certainly one of the areas that gives us more resilience. But we have to ensure that we don't just waste that and just use it. That was a key concern that came through on both sides of the debate. On the people who were against, I think they were quite cynical on the financial benefits that working across the region would bring. A very strong desire to retain local control and that accountability. Quite a strong opposition to price harmonisation. They didn't want to be supporting, or the perception they didn't want to be supporting other councils. And just a general affordability, just given the cost of living concerns that we have today, just an affordability of this whole discussion as well. And I think the final one that came through was quite a level of governance complexity that they saw that you would have council, then you'd have shareholder council, then you'd actually get to the water organisation sort of there. But again, coming back, the overriding from the consultation is support for the regional model in that 83%. There have been some recent legislative or recommendations to legislative changes coming through from the Select Committee. Probably the biggest one and the biggest change is the water organisation itself. They will prepare the water strategy based on the expectations coming through from the shareholders, representatives forum in the statement of expectations. Now, the key councils through the shareholder representative forum will still have the ability to approve the strategy, but it will no longer develop the strategy, which was in the initial sort of legislation. Of course, we can't ask them to do anything that is illegal. We can't ask them to do anything in the statement of expectations that's outside what we put into the founding documents, and we can't ask them to do anything that would actually take them away from their financial sustainability or investment targets that have been set and will be followed up through the Commerce Commission. So I think it really is key, coming back to the Constitution. That is a really important foundation document when we get to that stage into the transition, to make sure that we've got the right provisions sort of in there. Other areas of change, development contributions, which again, very important for this council, really focusing on growth, pays for growth. They've made some changes just to make the whole area more transparent and also get ready for that change from development contributions through to development levies as well. A change to actually support growth, especially in the urban area and housing growth. And then they've also just tried to be a little bit more clear and specific on transfer agreements. And that is essentially how we will put across our assets, our staff, the services, the contracts that we have today to this new entity once it's formed. So they're just putting more clarity sort of around that. So if we look at then where we're at with the other councils, we started off with the 4 councils in the region, all working towards setting up the regional WSCOO. Central Hawkesbury, they've confirmed they want to be part of this regional model. They've got some other challenges, and they're working through their CapEx plans to see if they can actually amend those and see what implications that has on their pricing levels and their rates. Napier this morning, they confirmed that they want to go ahead with the regional model. Wyro met on Tuesday, and they basically want to go as a single CCO. So for their delivery model, and that has meant we've had to basically get a draft heads of agreement up, and we will talk about that in the next stages. And then there's been an impact on some of the items we'll discuss in PX that are still in negotiations with councils. But because Wairo has pulled out, we now go from 4 to 3. So then the actual shareholding mix has sort of changed, and it will go from someplace from the 40 for Hastings that we had originally, and it will end up somewhere between 40 and 45%. And then the same, the cost sharing model, which is currently 45, 45, 10, then that may also change as the shareholding changes. That still needs to be discussed around, and obviously when we go from 4 councils to 3, changes a little bit the dynamics of shareholding sort of voting as well. We will talk about that in future slides. If we look at just the pure financial impact or the measured average impact on a household with Wairoa moving, then essentially the cost would increase slightly to $38 at the end of 2034. The price per connection, the average price per connection would increase by $38, which is, when it was 2,300, it's a small, relatively small increase over that period. And that's before we can see any further efficiencies that we may be able to generate just by working with the 3 councils together. With that, I'll pass over to Ms. Wazoo to talk about the heads of agreement.
Thank you, Graham. So I'm going to go through the heads of agreement, the key areas and the changes that have been made as a result of Wairoa's decision on Tuesday. The heads of agreement is essentially a commitment between the shareholder councils on how to move forward to establish a regional water services CCO, and we're going to touch on the governance structure, transitional arrangements, and other key terms in this session. So previously we've talked about the 4 councils being the shareholders, with representatives from each of the councils coming together in a shareholder representative forum who would interact directly with the board. Obviously, with Wairoa no longer being one of the shareholders, that moves from 4 to 3 council shareholders, each having up to 3 members appointed to the shareholder representative forum, alongside 1 non-voting independent chair to be appointed to the shareholder representative forum to facilitate that forum. The role of the shareholder representative forum is to produce and issue the joint statement of expectations on behalf of all shareholders to the board of directors. They are also responsible under the heads of agreement for the appointment of directors and reviewing their performance, monitoring the performance of the water service CCO, and reporting back to councils. None of that means that council can't also ask the board of directors to report directly back to council on a frequency that suits council, quarterly, 6 monthly, annually, whatever the preference is. So each council can appoint up to 3 members, whether that's councillors only or other appointees as to be determined by this council at a future date. That's up to council. To get to the setup of a regional CCO, we need to go through a transition and establishment phase before the actual legal entity itself can be stood up. The proposed approach for this in the heads of agreement is a transitional governance group that is essentially the precursor to a shareholder representative forum. So on the heads of agreement outlines that that's made up of the mayors of each shareholder council and 1 other nominated member. And I believe we have something in the recommendations today that has been added around this. We can go through that when we get to those. So the transitional governance group are responsible for overseeing and being that governance model during the transition phase. And essentially, should the decision today be for a regional water service entity, the first role, once that transitional governance group is stood up, is to go through the process of appointing an establishment board. This outlines the proposed structure for a transition to a regional entity. We have the transitional governance group who will be appointing the establishment board, and then the establishment board work alongside the project steering group and on with input from the TGG as well on the establishment of a chief executive. There is also a project team within the heads of agreement set up with one named officer from each shareholder council or an external appointee. That's up to each shareholder council to determine who to put through to that. And the idea with the project steering group is obviously elections are coming up. This transition phase will cross over that election period, and the continuity of chief executives involved in the process means that whatever comes through after elections, there is that continuity through that project steering group. Other key matters in the heads of agreement are normal commercial legal terms, including dispute resolution, intellectual property rights, and confidential information disclosures. We will go through in the PX session schedules 4 and 5 of the draft heads of agreement, which outline some of the proposed items for the legal documents and still to be negotiated. Moving on to the water service delivery plan, this is a legal requirement under the Water Services Bill. We have to, whichever delivery model is chosen today, we have to submit a water service delivery plan to the DAA by 3rd of September. Should we go with a regional model, that needs to be a regional water service delivery plan. So it will have regional numbers in it and operational matters per each of the 3 shareholder councils. We are working to update that for after Wairoa's decision on Tuesday. So some of those timings up there are likely to push out by a couple of days in August, but we do have a council workshop scheduled for next Thursday to run through the detail of that, as it's a rather large and complex document. However, regardless of which delivery model is chosen today, the WSDP needs to be submitted by 3rd of September. And I will pass over to Craig.
Through your worship, just in terms of a quick overhead summary of the mana whenua engagement to date. If I first touch on the work that was headed out on behalf of the region by the Regional Recovery Agency, which PwC were engaged to do. In the paper, it talks through, and up on the slide, are a number of the key themes that have come from, particularly the PSGs, tai whenuas, Ngāti Kanununu. Things obviously that are conscious to us on normal day-to-day business, that water quality is a really important priority. Concerned about water scarcity, which is both the water services that this council delivers, but also wider regional council from a total water system. Concerns that some of the treaty obligations may get watered down, and just to the members in the Water Services Bill amendments, they've brought forward the treaty obligations further up into the bill. It was buried sort of into clauses 40 or 60, and it's now up at clause 4 or 6, which just carries through those same obligations that local government have. Concern about economic pressures and the cost to households, which is a concern of the wider community. From the direct engagement that we've been having, it's sort of been 2 parts. One is, first of all, to date, it's been around what is local water done well and what isn't it, just around the understanding, because This isn't all things water, and it's just making sure that we're clear around what this piece of legislation is doing. And the important piece of work to progress that the heads of agreement creates a placeholder for is exactly how does that representation and voice actually make its way through to shareholders forum and some of the skills matrix that we may require or the entity may require for the directors. There are ongoing conversations that we need to continue to have with our mana whenua partners, not only this council's, but obviously the other shareholder partners.
And just to give some structure on the basis that the officer's recommendation is accepted today and adopted by council, then moving ahead to the next step would be appointing the mayor and one other nominated member to be on that transitional governance group. And a very important stage is then getting an establishment board set up and appointed by that transitional governance group. Following a terms of reference, that still needs to be presented and approved by council. That establishment board would then be responsible for appointing a chief executive, along with advice from the transitional governance group, working with the project steering sort of group as well. So CE to CE, just keeping everything sort of moving ahead and having that oversight role, and then leading to the establishment phase. Whichever structure is actually taken, this will be the most important, is getting whatever entity set up in the correct way to allow for the most facilitative and straightforward operations, sort of moving forward, with a view that we are going to set this up by 1 July 2026 to be structured as whatever this water services organisation will be.
Thank you very much, team. Now I will open for questions on the paper, questions on the presentation this afternoon, and then we move into debate following that. So today, as standing orders are in place, these are questions only on the paper and on the presentation we've received from Mr. Watson and Jess. So first of all, I'll start with Councillor Jessup.
Kia ora, thank you for the presentation. I'd just like to wind back to the mana whenua update, please. The last point across region differences in how council engage with mana whenua. How is that going to be monitored? And I'm solely interested in, now that Wairoa is not in the picture, how does that affect anything that goes on with mana whenua here? Kia ora.
Through your worship, that commentary come through from PwC was around the feedback they had from the different mana whenua PSG groups across the region. Each of the council currently has a different way in which it's interacting with those treaty settlement groups and tai whenuas across the different areas. For example, at an operational level, we're the only council that has like a tangata whenua joint wastewater committee. So for us, that would carry on because it's locked into a contract. For Central Hawke's Bay, they have one PSG in which they're relating to, and we have multiple. So it was more an observation that they're different. Moving forward, that's absolutely a conversation, and you'll recall when we met with Timothy Poka Whenua in Need, actually we need a collective conversation around how do we do this, the collective as well as the individual inputs. And so we need to work with our partners to actually design how that would be most efficiently delivered.
Councillor Jessup, are you comfortable with that response? Direction? Thank you. Councillor Corbyn.
Thank you, Your Worship. Can we go back to slide 3? The graph with the average cost per connection. If I look at that slide, we've got the current LTP as the most cost-effective option, and in year 33, a rapid increase or a sharp increase in cost per connection without any indication what's happening thereon after that. Could we have an explanation of that graph? Why all the models have got a higher cost of connection, and what does happen beyond 2033?
Thank you.
Through you, Your Worship. The LTP is the graph there is a reflection of, is driven by the capital expenditure program. The LTP funds the bulk of our capital expenditure through debt. Under the modelling and the legislative requirements, the price path for revenue, which driven by that capital expenditure program, had to increase because we had to fund through revenue as opposed to funding all through debt. So what you see in that last year, therefore, 33 to 34, is a significant increase in capital expenditure works. Craig may be able to answer better as to exactly why it's all in, like why there's a peak there in year 10, but typically what we find in the LTP is it's a phasing, a timing issue rather than an indication that those costs are going to continue to go up at that same rate over the future years.
Thank you. Craig, did you want to add anything? Thank you.
Through Your Worship, yeah, yes, just building on Jess's comments, that was work that was just sitting at the tail of the program. As we go through each LTP, in the current sense, what tends to happen is some of that work can get spread, some needs to be brought forward because the condition, or it gets pushed out and to tend to get more of a smoothing rather than a peak, unless there was like a one big project. So in our slightly later future, beyond this 10-year environment, we will have a replacement of the wastewater outfall. That will be a tens of millions of dollars project, and that would create a big peak, which would create debt. So the peak is just picking up on some set projects, and as Jess talked about, under the new regime, needing to have free funds and more operating capital to fund that just needed more revenue, as different to the LTP where it was under a different funding constraint, different funding set of rules.
Thank you for that, but it doesn't explain why it was going down under the LTP model and going up.
Through Your Worship. So in the LTP, that peak of capital expenditure is funded through debt. This is showing the average cost per connection average cost per connection or household, which is revenue for the water service entity. So you see a peak in that cost for the connection because we're having to fund it through revenue, as opposed to in the LTP we fund those capital charges through debt.
So the capital expenditure that Craig was talking about is still in that.
Correct.
Councillor Fowler.
Thank you, Worship. Three hopefully brief questions. Can you, through you, Worship, in terms of working out the costs as we've seen before, I understand we built on the Morrison Lowe model, and then PwC were our external advisors.
Through you, Chair. Yes, that's correct, Councillor Fowler. We used Morrison Lowe and then PwC.
And was the approach taken a conservative one? In other words, not window dressed to make it look as if the option was the best, not that they would do that legally, of course, but was it done on a conservative basis or not?
Through you, Chair. If we look at the basis upon which it was based, certainly the efficiencies that have been factored in are on a very conservative base and not starting until we actually get the operations sort of moving for both capital efficiencies as well as operational efficiencies.
Thank you. And second question, Your Worship, I note the legislation has changed from setting to inform and guide, and through Your Worship, could I have an answer from one question to one of the officers? Would that drastically affect the ratepayers of the Heretaunga Hastings district for that change? Is there a concern there that wording may lead to lack of control with the Board of Directors?
Through Your Worship, given the fact that Council, through the Shareholder Representation Forum, will still need to approve whatever comes through on the strategy, then I don't see that there should be a huge concern for the ratepayers in the community of Heretaunga Hastings.
Yep, thank you. And my last and final question, can you please confirm that there will be currently no price harmonisation, that is, our council will be subsidising other councils.
Again, through you.
Highlighted in the heads of agreement.
Through you, Chair. Again, yes, there is no price harmonisation factored into any of the modelling or any of the planning.
Thank you.
Yes, it's been very, very prevalent throughout all of our submissions. Councillor Scholler?
Thank you, Worship. Fortunately, Councillor Fowler has already picked up one of my questions, so two brief questions, if I may. Transparency is a fundamental duty under the Local Government Act or of local government, and I'm just really interested to understand how that applies through this model. How does the community benefit from the same transparency I would hope that we have to operate under?
Through your worship. So there are a number of forms. So from an official information Lagoima request, those requirements that this council has on it, transfers and water organisations are now named in that act once the bill is passed. Through the Commerce Commission, there are additional things that get put in place in terms of Commerce Commission code of conduct, in terms of and reviews around how they're working with customers, but also that all the water service entities, regardless of option, will also have to partake in an information disclosure. What is in that information disclosure has not yet been defined, although you can get a sense of it from what they're asking from Wellington Water at the moment, or what some other utilities. So that has lots of the information that drives how compliance is going, what's the basis of all the cost ingredients and what it's been spent on. So there's quite a lot of information akin to an LTP, if not slightly more detailed in respect to the wastewater and the three waters investment.
Thank you. And through you, through your worship, and just to add to that, the water service organisation will still need to produce an annual report which reports back on the water services strategy and outcomes against that. Excellent, thank you, team. Through you, your worship, my second question. Could someone please advise me roughly, I mean, what we're looking at doing is essentially moving to the regional CCO water debt off council's books, and I'm just interested to understand roughly how much debt does that free up for our council? I am springing that on you. I was trying to look at graphs, but I couldn't really decipher. Through your worship. At the moment, it's around 220 million of water debt, I believe. All of that would transfer over to the regional water services entity. In terms of how much debt headroom that frees up for council, we'd have to come back to you on those exact numbers. Thank you. Your worship, one more question has sprung to mind which relates, if I may.
Yes.
Thank you. Through you, worship. That's a significant quantum. And I picked up from the submissions, as I'm sure everyone did, that a key concern from submitters was that,
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, was that the debt headroom would create more borrowing capacity. Is there anything that this council can do to signal to or enforce upon a future council that debt headroom not be essentially a blank cheque for a future council? Because I know this council doesn't want
Well, I think that's an opportunity for you as a councillor to make sure that is included in recommendations or heads of agreement or shareholding forum. That is really important for council to be able to understand, because we've heard that through our submissions. So how we get that into any forward planning, I'll just ask Mr. Allen to.
I think there's nothing you can do that binds a future council so rigidly going forward. However, I think in your resolutions on 29th of April, when you adopted the consultation process in your preferred option, you acknowledged then that actually you wanted that I guess that constraint to be acknowledged and passed on to future council. So we can take that wording out and reiterate it in these resolutions if that was something that was if that helped.
Thank you, Mr. Allen, and thank you, Worship. When it comes time, I would very much like to add that to the recommendations, but I realise you're taking questions right now.
Great, thank you. Councillor Watkins?
Thank you, Worship. Just a question to officers. With Wairua withdrawing and the 10% of the cost that they were wearing, why has that 10% been only allocated across Napier and Hastings and not CHB?
Through your worship, it has been allocated across all councils in, I just bring you back to this one here. So the shared costs that were originally across all 4 councils included some operational and capital establishment costs, as well as ongoing operational costs, which are outlined in the modelling and criteria assumptions attached to the paper. What we have shown here in this graph is the effect of Wairoa withdrawing and those shared costs now being distributed across 3 council shareholders instead of 4. So that's why you see a peak increase in years financial years 26 and 27, which is when the establishment costs are at their highest. That red line that's just above the black one there. And then the impact of sharing the ongoing operational costs is a very small increase to Hastings.
Thank you.
Through your worship, I just need clarification because you put a slide up there. Now Hastings 45, Napier 45, Central Hawke's Bay 10. Shareholding only? Okay, thank you.
Through your worship, and I obviously wasn't clear enough when I went through the slide. Those new shareholdings need to be formally negotiated and finalised with the 3 councils. So what we were trying to indicate today, it's 40-40. It was 40-40-10-10. What we would expect is it will go someplace between 40 to 45 if we use exactly the same split using the 70% connections, 30% of an equal share. We would expect to see that go 42-42-16. The reason that it hasn't moved in the paperwork is we just don't know what to move it to yet. I believe there has been discussions with CHB and they are aware of a shareholder movement would also indicate a movement in sharing of the costs as well.
Thank you very much. Through your worship, Mr. Watson covered it sufficiently. Just it is a discussion, but we are really talking about it at the margins. So if council was a 45% shareholder, that might reduce to 44 or 43. It's not a significant change.
Thank you. Question, Councillor Nixon.
Thank you, Your Worship. I've got a couple of questions. The first one is, not everybody receives all 3 water services, but the figures we've been given, are they a mixture? How's that worked out? Is it just potable water, or is it all 3?
How's the household broken down into 3 waters? Thank you.
Your worship. The figures up here are based on an average per connection. So I think if we start at, it starts at around 1,800 in financial year 25, and that represents across the 3 waters. So the 1,800 is an average for a household that has all 3 connected services. It is very difficult to model if we had a household with only drinking water and wastewater. So what we've done is taken an average based on the price path revenue calculations in the PwC model per household. So it's taken the total revenue, dividing by the number of connections we have in Hastings.
So does a supplementary question, if I could, on that. Does that mean that somebody that only receives one of those services would have a much greater increase than the graph shows?
Through your worship. Someone only receiving one of those, it's difficult to give you an answer on one service because the revenue's been spread over households having 3. There will be some ups and some downs, but it's difficult to determine that without really getting into the detail, and we have such a variety across the district.
So I'll just get everybody to focus their questions on the heads of agreement in the first part of the agenda. Thank you.
That's not according to my recommendations. we're covering all these things, not just heads of agreement.
No, we're covering the first part of the paper. Thank you. Item 5.
Through your worship, just reminding councillors that schedules 4 and 5 of the heads of agreement are in the public excluded part of the agenda.
Well, perhaps I could. That seems
Sorry,
a little strange
so Craig,
to me. The question.
so Craig's going to answer your question. He's going to try. Thank you.
Through your worship, as Jess talks about, to get to the finite detail, it's very difficult. Because, for example, if a lot of that tail was wastewater, then if you only got drinking water, you wouldn't see that kick at the tail. But there are the overall revenue. I think the key takeaway the officers can say to all the council is the trends will be the same. So if you just have a water services, the trend is in that order without giving an exact number down. So if you've just got wastewater and drinking water, because you're a connected rural property and you're not an urban stormwater dweller, the trend will be the same, but the exact number and the breakdown. In the same vein, if you have a water supply that goes past your house, but you're not connected, you'll carry on paying the half charge of whatever that increase goes. So the trend, I think, is the key piece rather than the specific number at this point.
Can I ask my second question? And the second question is, just so I better understand the difference in cost from our current LTP to any of the other lines, what is the principal ingredient that elevates it to such an extent?
Through your worship, the main reason for the difference is the funding requirements under the LGFA. We have to have the FFO ratio, which is our free funds from operations, compared to our debt levels. So within the LTP, the way that funds capital expenditure is a lot more through debt than through increasing rates. Whereas under the through local water done well legislation and the LGFA funding requirements for new debt, we need to meet certain FFO to net debt ratios, and part of that means increasing those charges.
Thank you. Councillor Apatu.
Thank you, Your Worship. Hastings District Council and Mana Whenua have worked very hard to date to ensure that the values and voice of Mana Whenua are embedded into the services of our water services delivery. How can we guarantee that this will continue with the new proposed regional water services delivery arm?
So, Mr. Thu, thank you. So just reiterate some of those areas in which we can make sure our partnership stays strong.
So in terms of continuing the work that we've got with Mana Whenua, as mentioned before, obviously the council through how it sets up the shareholders forum gives the ability to have a voice, and each council can choose how it uses that. It's this council, and in particular the Tangata Whenua Joint Wastewater Committee, will be an enduring entity in terms of the oversight on the operation of the Wastewater Committee. This council's also in active work around our stormwater consent and the work that we're doing on our drinking water, and that stormwater consent is about to be lodged very shortly, which also has connections around how we keep a voice at an operational level and stay tuned to how do we respond to legislation, and also how do we inform each other around what's going on. So a number of the parts of the operational organism would persist through this. But then importantly, those elements around that shareholders forum and this council's involvement in the statement of expectation helps lean into that space. Obviously, as I mentioned before, we still have ongoing conversations to have with Mana Whenua around how does that ultimately play through.
Thank you. Councillor Barrow.
Thank you, Your Worship. My question is how this CC or proposed CCO might differ from other examples of CCOs around the country. The reason I ask is because ratepayers and elected members in places like Auckland that have very important CCOs like Auckland Transport often are concerned at the accountability and control of those CCOs to elected members.
Thank you, Mr. Watson. Following on from also Councillor Shollam's question about accountability and making sure that our community gets their voice and understands how efficient and effective the entity will be and how we report back.
Your Worship, I think first and foremost, the legislation makes the water services CCOs slightly different, and they now must give effect to whatever comes through on the statement of expectations, provided, as they say, is not illegal. It doesn't basically take away their financial ratios, and we're not asking them to do something that wasn't within the intended setup in the foundational documents. So that's the first place, and that's quite a fundamental change in the accountability sort of measure. In addition, we have the annual report where they have to come back. We would also be advocating to this council that we set up regular reporting from the Water Services organisation directly back to council, probably on a quarterly basis, following up on key KPIs to then be able to come back. So that accountability is maintained and can be enforced regularly through the year and followed up.
Happy with that, Councillor Butto? I think this is a really, really important part of our shareholders' agreement going forward. We've heard that from our community, from our councillors, and I think that, you know, making sure that we get that accountability across those agreements is critically important. Councillor Te Auskipua.
Thank you, Te Kura Matua. We had over 1,000 submissions. We had a number in person. And I note that our mana whenua talked about the water scarcity to tiriti. Did we do an intentional drive to get feedback from our rangatahi? And the reason I asked this question is because I had asked a few myself, and the fear for them was, when we're freeing up debt, who are we shackling? Did we have an intentional drive to go to secondary schools or even our own youth council?
Yeah, I mean, the community engagement. Do we have anybody here? Naomi?
I think, through your worship, I think the key thing, like the premise with the consultation was to get the consultation out as far and wide as we possibly could. I think that the number of submissions that came back sort of indicate that was successful. I think, did we have a specific consultation or effort within to schools and the like? I don't believe we did that to that degree. We used that in more channels to get the information out there, and some additional ones, but I don't believe there was a targeted consultation with our younger people.
Follow-up note for my question, in the blink of an eye, we've got a 10-year plan, and in the blink of an eye, these rangatahi will inherit our decision-making.
Thank you, Councillor Te Auskipua. And I think that this is just the beginning, and I think there's an opportunity for consultation with rangatahi in the future. And having the Youth Council in my office yesterday for a couple of hours, certainly we talked about local water's done well in that delivery of a change. So, but wider, I think that's a very, very good suggestion. Councillor Harvey.
Yeah, thank you, and sorry to bang on about the accountability and transparency which has been raised, but it is obviously one of the biggest issues, and I just want to understand how we can implement an action to make sure that what are the options or what can be put forward around accountability and transparency, like the direction of the community voice or a consumer group or whatever, that makes sure that they are at that level, because at the moment the accountability pretty much falls on us around this table, and we're responsible for it when things do go wrong. So how do we make sure of that going forward?
So you could include a recommendation, Councillor Harvey, today about for officers to seek ways to look at accountability for the future arrangements through the transitional board governance?
Just to add to that, it may seem as if we may be digging down into the weeds a little bit about what that may well be, but I think it is actually a really important aspect for the community.
No, I'm very happy to take that as a recommendation. Thank you. Councillor Te Auskipua. Councillor Kerr.
Kia ora, Your Worship. A brief comment, and then 4 hopefully yes/no questions. And the brief comment is a thank you to the staff for such a fulsome report. To be able to read from the beginning to the end, it truly does tell the story of local waters done well. So thank you very much. My hopefully 4 yes/no questions. If Wairoa wish to return to the fold, if directed to turn to the fold, or another council, is there a process that they can rejoin and help support us with the set-up costs that we've had to pay?
Through your worship, there is a process defined. We'll probably more discuss that in PX.
Lovely, thank you.
That's coming up.
All right. Myself and members of the community would be concerned if this entity could be privatised or this entity went and bought another entity. Is there anything that we need to do or say now, or is that also going to be picked up through a separate process?
It's of agreement. Thank you.
Through your worship, I would suggest we ensure that is a matter of importance, again, that we would discuss in PX, but there's also provisions currently in legislation as well that does give some current protection.
Thank you. Our draft water services delivery plan was sent to the DIA, and I understand we're looking at feedback. Were there any major issues raised with the
draft water services?
The draft water service delivery plan?
That will come back to council.
Okay.
The water services delivery plan will come back to council before it's submitted to the DIA.
There was nothing that came up that we weren't aware of.
Lovely.
And had anticipated we would get a response on.
Thank you. And the last question is, and this is actually more to the recommendations, given that under PX we're going to be discussing schedules 4 and 5, should the recommendations say when we endorse the heads of agreement, except for schedules 4 and 5, which we'll then pick up in our next decision making? I'm just happy to leave that as something that's worked on while we finish the debate. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. We'll come back to that. Right, there's no further questions. Now I'm going to direct you to recommendations on page 8, and also I'll ask the officers to bring them up in front of us, and now we'll focus the debate on those recommendations.
Just a point of order, Your Worship. I understand the amended recommendations were emailed to us very recently.
We're just going to put them up on the screen now, thank you, and we'll talk to those, and I'll ask the officers to take us through them. Thank you. Councillor Sholem.
Your Worship, just for your information too, I've emailed through to Democratic Support a suggested addition to the recommendations, which I wouldn't mind an opportunity to speak to once we've gone through.
Thank you. Great. All right. So as per standing orders, please direct your debate on the recommendations before you, and I'll just ask the officers to take you through these changes that are in red, and then we look for a direction from the councillors. So thank you, Bruce.
Your Worship. Through Your Worship. So just skipping it through, so there's some minor adjustments to recommendations E and F. That's just really just noting Wairoa's decision on Tuesday, and that the heads of agreement that is attached to your reports will need to be amended. You've received this morning a draft of what that would look like. There could be some subtle changes yet to come, but that's all that we expect them to be, just subtle changes. So, and then delegating to the Chief Executive to execute that revised heads of agreement, noting that Wairoa District Council is removed from the version that you had in your papers. There is an additional recommendation, which is G. It's just noting around the transitional governance group that's outlined in the heads of agreement, that it notes that the mayor and another member will be appointed, and we're just seeking direction so that we can appoint those members quickly following this meeting, so that transitional governance group can get together soon and start that process around the creation of the establishment board. So that's really about what that's about.
Thank you. Just some opening comments from me as we work through the recommendations. Can I just also acknowledge both the RRA and our officers and everybody who's been involved in this very, very long process. We have worked with many parties. We have agreed to consult with our community. We have heard that 83% of them supported a regional CCO structure. This work came from the Havelock North water crisis in 2016 and the government inquiry about how New Zealand would deliver the water services more efficiently and more affordably for our people. And can I acknowledge Mrs. McIntosh in the room? She has been on this journey with us for a very, very long time and went through the hardship of the Havelock North crisis. So we are very aware of making sure we have the best services that are affordable for our community for the future. And I can also please acknowledge the work that I've done with my regional colleagues to help us to get to this place today, because it hasn't been, it's been a long and hard journey. We need to get that establishment board set up as quickly as possible, and that is really, really important. And that brings together the experts about what this and how this function will work. And so that is really very important for us to consider. Also, we've heard about from our community the importance of accountability and that framework, both under the Act, and also how do we make sure that we're accountable to our community. And that is critically important, how we manage that framework and the next steps of transitional boards, governance boards, and how that's set up. We have done the due diligence. We have worked tirelessly in workshops. In fact, some councillors said to me, I think we've done this to death. Mayor Sandra, can we just have a break from more workshops on what this model could, future models could look like? We've also understood the importance of the data and the debt and how important that is to us. Since 2017 and our strategy in 2018, we have delivered $101 million of our safe water strategy and have done a huge amount. But in terms of the future, the change of regulations, the change of the environmental settings, there has to be a change in delivery and affordability and the ability to borrow. So I am very supportive of the recommendations that are before us. I think and I thank you for the enormous amount of time that this work program has taken, and that you have given your sitting through submissions, sitting through tireless moments of understanding some very, very difficult ways of delivering. And I thank you for your diligence in this change of direction of the Local Waters Done Well reform from the Crown. So on that note, I'm happy to take direction, and I'm happy to hear from you. I know it is election year, but I ask you to please realise that you're representing your community today. That's all I'll say to that. Thank you. I'll take direction now. Councillor Sholem.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I'd also like to take a moment to acknowledge you and your efforts in working with our region's leaders in this process that's been years in the making. I think, like everyone, I've been reflecting on the submissions we heard, over 1,000 we read, and some came in here and spoke to us. And the common themes that came out that people were worried about, that I certainly shared, were things like losing local control, transparency, rising costs and price harmonisation. However, I believe those concerns have been addressed as best we can, looking at things like ring fencing revenue, transparency mechanisms, council shareholding and clear price setting responsibilities. The governance element in terms of accountability, yes, it's not as close, I think, as we would all like to the ratepayer, but actually within the law and within the requirements ahead of us, I think we've achieved the best possible outcome that we can. And I really want to acknowledge the staff for that work as well. The one area that I've been really reflecting on, though, that we actually as a council can't control because of the timing of all of this, is that debt headroom that's created if we move our debt over to a CCO. 220 million approximately, that's huge. And a clear message from our community has been, don't use that as a blank cheque. The only way that we can recognise that, I see, is in reiterating the motion that I moved back in April. So I've sent through some recommendations to the team for consideration, and I would like to move those, Your Worship, all of the recommendations, including the addition, if the team can bring that up, please. So if you could remove the A to H as stated, because now there's further recommendations above, and so I'll leave that for consideration, but that's what I would like to move.
Okay, so I'll take a minute for everybody to have a look at this additional recommendation that has been. I'm actually happy to move the recommendations as per the agenda, and if you want to move an additional amendment.
Absolutely, Your Worship.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay. So do I have a seconder for the, thank you, Councillor Fowler, and these are the recommendations as per the agenda. So I'm happy to move those. I have a seconder, Councillor Fowler, and now we'll talk to those recommendations. If we can just move up, thank you, Lynn. The ones that were on the screen with the red parts in them are the ones that I'm moving. Councillor Fowler, are you happy with those additions of the red part?
Yes, Your Worship.
Thank you. Any other speakers to those recommendations? Sorry, Councillor Kerr.
Thank you, Your Worship. I actually would like slight typing correction in recommendation C. So I'm happy to wait till the greater changes are made. It's just more clarity around the English and the intent of recommendation C. So I understand that the intent of recommendation C is we're going to go and do this with at least Napier, full stop, and in addition the other territorial authorities. So my correction I would like to make is, to make that really clear, is after Napier City Council that we then put brackets, and those brackets go through to the end of the recommendation, and after Wairau District put and or Central Hawke's Bay. And then I think it just more correctly captures the intent is we will, because this is the core recommendation, that we're approving a joint water services organisation with Napier and preferably with our other two councils. So that was just my sense of clarification, please.
So I just a point of clarification, because as we've heard today that Napier City are already included, and so is Central Hawke's Bay. So I'm just unsure. I'll just ask Mr. Allen why we would need to make those changes.
Through Your Worship, I think the recommendations were written at a time when we didn't know the outcome of other councils' decision making. So when the recommendations in the report was put up, that Napier City and Wairau District had not made their decisions. So it's acknowledging that actually, as we move forward, the real benefits of having a regional CCO are if Napier and Hastings are in this together. We've heard this morning that Napier City Council have resolved to join part of it. So I think either way you could strip out the components that relate to the other councils, and we would still be, it would probably be cleaner that way now that we're the last to come to the table and make this decision.
So
may I respond?
I'm not sure we need that.
I don't mind which way. I just, what is up there to me, what was there originally, just didn't feel correct. And this needs to be our own standalone document that references exactly what our decision making is. And for me, this decision is about us working with Napier, preferably with the others as well, but At this stage, I don't have in writing what Napier has done. So I'm making a decision based on our wording in our document, and I would like that to reflect. If we will approve a joint water services organisation with Napier, and a full stop is okay, or with the brackets, as I suggested, around the others, which is what's up there.
Thank you. I'm happy with that change. Councillor Fowler, are you happy with that subtle change? I don't think it's going. I don't think it's going to be significant. No, I don't think it's significant change.
Happy.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Dixon.
Thank you, Worship. Just going to suggest a minor tweak to E. Council endorse the draft heads of agreement document, attachment 1, excluding schedules 4 and 5, because we haven't discussed those because they're in BX.
Very happy to include those. Thank you, Councillor Dixon. Councillor Seconder, Councillor Fowler, are you happy to include those? Thank you. Councillor Butto.
Thank you, Your Worship. Are we moving into debate on this? Yes, we are. Thank you. Wonderful. Look, and I have another 5 tweaks I'd like to go through. Right? No, my apologies.
I'd like to hear your reasons why we need to support those recommendations, Councillor Butto.
And you'll be pleased, Your Worship, that's why I rose to speak to that.
Wonderful.
I'd like to make the point that I think that this is really the only viable option going forwards in the context of rising costs for ratepayers around, not just from this council, but in general life. I may not like the arm's length accountability as it currently stands through a CCO, but I do recognise Mr. Watson's points that this is different from a normal CCO and other examples around the country, and should give better accountability to the ratepayer through elected officials. At the end of the day, this water is a natural monopoly. It's something you don't have a choice but to be signed up for, and ratepayers and users need to be completely sure that they can direct it as they see fit, and that they can hold any board of directors or CCO accountable for it. What I'll be looking for as we develop this further is greater accountability to ratepayers, and making sure that that is well put into both the heads of agreement and cemented into any sort of future constitution. But at the end of the day, I see no real alternative to this. It does deliver more cost-effective water. And I think we have to acknowledge the huge volume of submissions we got, which I understand are the most from around the country, at 83% in favour. And that really does speak to a community that is both engaged, understanding, and wants us to move forward with this. I'll be happy to consider any of my colleagues' recommendations around debt headroom or accountability, but I am in favour.
Thank you, Councillor Butto. Councillor Teo Skipworth.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just in reference to my previous questions, I took it upon myself to get some feedback, and I'd be asking you if I can read a small piece of literature from one of our rangatahi for us to consider in regards to the matters that we're about to resolve. So we may have seen Isadora Carney McKnight. She's from Woodford House, and she won the Manu Korero Koremako Senior English Speech Competition, and will go to the Nationals to represent Te Matua Māui in this section. So I was lucky enough to be the MC and heard Isadora's speech. So I met with her, bringing a rangatahi voice to the table, and asked if I could use a piece of her speech. After reading it again, I decided not to redact any of it and read it in its entirety, because I think it's really important for my fellow councillors to hear. So if you allow me, e te koro matua, it'll be about 3 minutes long, and I hope I do the same eloquence that Isadora did. Water is the same age as the solar system itself. It carried our tupuna here. It has watched colonies rise and fall. We come from water. We ask, ko waikwe, from whose waters are you from? It doesn't respect borders, rules, or human pride. Water just flows, unstoppable, untamable, alive. We spend our lives trying to dominate nature, but nature was never ours to control. And now water is speaking. Are you listening? I used to see water as just something that came out of the tap. I'd fill a glass and not even think about where it came from. But now I see water differently. I see it when I look at the ocean and feel the pull of something ancient. I see it in the rivers that carve our whenua like veins, carrying the memories of our tupuna. I see it when I cry, when grief pulls from my body like rain returning to Papatuanuku. Water is not just what we drink, it is what we are. It connects us to each other, to our past and to what's coming. And I promise you, something is coming. Water connects all living things. It falls as rain on mountaintops, flow through rivers and reaches the sea where it becomes one with Tangaroa. It feeds the plants that feed us. It nourishes the trees that breathe for us. It keeps us alive from the moment we're born until we return to the earth. When we die, the rain falls on our graves. It soaks into the earth like tears of those we leave behind. It is the gathering place for animals, sometimes to drink, sometimes to kill, and sometimes to be killed, but it always connects. Water is the thread that ties every living thing together. But water doesn't just nourish, it destroys in the form of floodwaters, tsunami, or cyclones, and it doesn't knock, it crashes. It devours homes, it shatters families, it washes away whenua that has been lived on for generations. Tangaroa is powerful, he gives, but he also takes. And when we forget to show respect, he reminds us. People lose everything in an instant, their homes, their whānau, their mauri. You can't argue with water, you can't stop it. You can only move aside and try to survive. We build walls, we build dams, we build cities, but still water finds a way because it always has. Something has vexed our waters because in 2023, Cyclone Gabriel hit Hawke's Bay and showed us what it could do. The amount of damage it could cause, the grief and loss that could wash over us and send shivers of realisation through our veins. The realisation of actions needed to take in order to calm water's raging current. But it also showed us how quickly people could forget. In 1988, Cyclone Bola gave Hawke's Bay the same message, the same wake-up call that people refused to pay attention to. Now is our time to listen, to understand, to act. We are not just disrespecting water, we are poisoning it, we are choking the sea and waterways with plastic. We are draining wetlands that once gave life. We're treating water like it is a resource instead of a taonga. And now water is getting angry. The climate is shifting, the ice is melting, the sea is rising, our summers are too dry, our storms too strong, and people still say climate change isn't real. But water knows, water has always known, nature doesn't seek revenge, it seeks balance. We took more than we were ever meant to. Now the balance is tipping. I'm nearly finished, Jumia. But there is hope because some have always listened. In 2017, my river, the Wanganui Awa, was granted legal personhood. Not just protected, not just preserved, but recognised in law as a living being with its own voice and its own rights. Ko au te awa, ko te awa ko au. I am the river, and the river is me. The river runs through my veins, but now walks alongside me. The law is finally catching up to the wisdom of our ancestors. The river is no longer seen as something to own, but something to honour, something to stand beside. So let this show that it's not too late. We can remember what our ancestors knew. The water is sacred. The why is whakapapa. That when we protect the water, it protects us. Let's stop wasting water like it's endless. Let's stop building over wetlands, over rivers, over sacred spaces. Let's listen to Indigenous voices. Let's restore, replant, reimagine. Let's teach our tamariki that water is not just a compound, it is a kaitiaki, that every time they drink, they are sharing in something ancient, something divine. Imagine a future when rivers run clean again, when the ocean doesn't rise in anger but sings in peace, where water no longer has to remind us of its power because we never forgot. That future is possible, but we must choose it. Water doesn't see race, doesn't care of who you vote for. Water doesn't care how rich you are, but it reflects the world we've made. And right now that reflection is cracked. We separate ourselves by colour, by wealth, by power. But water doesn't separate, it flows together, it finds the lowest point and gathers. Maybe that's what we need to do. Find the low ground, get humble, sit by the river and listen, because when we're gone, when our buildings crumble and our power fails, if the rivers still run, the ocean will still rise and the water will still win. But wouldn't it be better if we walked with it instead of drowning beneath it? So I ask you, what story do you want to tell about us? Let it be one of awakening, let it be one of honour, let it be one of return. So in bringing the rangatahi voice to the table, I can't support the recommendations. Kia ora.
Thank you. And Isadora, can I just thank you for your wonderful speech and for Councillor Te Skipper for sharing it today. It's wonderful to hear your guardianship and your protection of our precious taonga water for the future. And for us, we are looking at ways in which we can protect it, waiaroha, and all across our service delivery of water meters and different ways of delivering water. So thank you for your incredibly wise words. You're the rangatira of the future, and we appreciate that you sharing that with us today.
Sandra, if I can just give a reason why I don't support it, because it doesn't reflect what I've just spoken about.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, Isadora.
Councillor Sholem.
Sorry, just a process question from me, Your Worship.
Yes.
So earlier on, I moved all the recommendations plus my addition. What are we actually debating at the moment?
We're doing all the recommendations without your addition.
Without?
Yes. So we will add your amendment in the end. Or I mean,
So again, just to reiterate, Your Worship, I moved all the recommendations, including my addition, and was seconded by Councillor Fowler.
That's what I thought I was seconding.
Sorry?
So just
Craig,
to clarify,
could you just put the recommendations up, please? Lynn?
So just to clarify, Your Worship, when I first spoke, I moved all the recommendations plus my addition.
Oh, I thought you were moving just your amendment.
Seconded me.
Okay.
So can we just clarify that's the substantive motion that's on the table, everything including my addition? That's what we're
Yes, well, I didn't hear you saying that you're moving all of the recommendations. I thought you were talking to your amendment.
No,
okay.
moved
All right. So I'll withdraw my moving today, and Councillor Fowler, you seconded Councillor Sholem. I missed that. Okay, cool. All right, let's put all those recommendations up. And the last one just covers off accountability. All right, so I'll just move through the speakers actually, and I'll come now to Councillor Harvey because we may have other further recommendations as I understand it. Councillor Harvey.
Yes, and thank you, Isadora, that was fantastic, and I think that's one of the key reasons why something like what we're trying to add here around the accountability is put into the recommendations. And I just want to, so am I able to just add the amendment to your?
Right, so you're adding K?
Yes.
Oh, right, well, thank you. We're sort of all over the show.
We are,
so all right.
Yeah, that's what I've been working up with.
All right.
Yeah,
Mr. Cameron, are you okay with that?
Yes. So the mover and second, are you happy with the addition of recommendation K?
Yes, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you. Could I ask all councillors to please read recommendation K because we haven't had a chance to see it yet. Thank you.
Through Madam Chair, it may be helpful perhaps, so I've lost a little bit of track drafting everyone's changes, but it may be useful at this stage for Mr. Allen just to restate and confirm the substantive motion that's on the table. If the original movers and seconders are happy to receive these additional paragraphs,
they are. Yes, thank you. So this is the substantive motion, which is including now K. Thank you. So we're just having a look at K because this is what we will be deciding whether we support or not.
There is one word that I actually had no idea about.
I'm sure you can work that one out.
You're not the only one.
Order. Through the chair, please. Councillor Harvey, do you want to speak to your recommendation?
And still.
No, I'm fine. I think everybody has covered off the transparency and accountability as a concern.
So have we made that change to that word that, yes, that's the word? Could we please change that? What would you like it to be? Included?
Included is fine, I think.
Included is good. Are you happy with included? It's your recommendation.
Yes, because I won't be able to pronounce the other one when I go.
Okay. All right. Well, that makes sense. Excellent. All right. So this is a substantive motion now. The mover and seconder have agreed to include recommendation K, and this is what we will be debating. Councillor Fowler is the seconder. Do you want to speak to the recommendations now?
I'll hold to the end.
Thank you.
Your Worship, could I just make a general comment in support of the overall recommendations?
Yes,
yep.
certainly.
I'm happy to support all of them, and I think Kay rounds it off, getting that community aspirations. The government, as we know, central government has mandated us to do this process. We've worked tirelessly looking at options. And I believe, and as the community, 83% have agreed. The most submissions, I believe, in all of New Zealand, we have to go with an option, and I believe this is the best option. We do have to have eyes on this, as in terms of, and I wouldn't be remiss if I said we have to make sure that the projections that have been outlined we're held into account. We have a minor shareholder, Central Hawke's Bay coming in with us, who, and we have to be mindful of them in terms of cost as well. So wholeheartedly support these as the best option, as has been dealt to us by central government legislation, Your Honour.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, Councillor Fowler. Councillor Montepito Hendry.
Thank you, through you, Your Worship. I sort of echo the sentiments around the table. I have reservations about this option, despite my personal doubts. The government have spoken. The status quo can't remain. With thanks to the team, the financial modelling and the undertaking of many workshops to understand local orders done well makes this option the most viable choice under the circumstances. This comes with a responsibility to ensure that the foundational agreements and constitution are staunch for our people, and it means that council must be restrained around any headroom that they hold strong for a rainy day, and that's been captured in the additional recommendations, so thank you. So I will vote in favour of the recommendations, though I do not like them. Sam, I am.
Thank you, Councillor Montepito Hendry. Councillor Nixon.
Thank you, Your Worship. My comments probably won't come as a big surprise to many in the room.
Speaking to the recommendations. Thank you, Councillor Nixon.
Well, we've been presented as part of the documents, and I will be addressing those points that were the backup information. Nobody wants a repeat of the Havelock North water crisis. We all know that. It left at least 5,000 people seriously ill and resulted in several deaths. And we don't want polluted waters going into our rivers and the sea. That's taken for granted. We have to accept that this is actually not necessarily our choice, but rather a choice forced upon us by government through their agency, the Department of Internal Affairs. I point out we have invested some 200 million, as I understand, upgrading our drinking water since the Havelock North crisis, and we have a 20-year consent or thereabouts on our wastewater treatment operations. I believe conformity with the government edicts could well break many urban ratepayers who will end up facing very significant cost increases on top of the 20% rates increase last year, the 15% rates increase this year, and at least 10% the year after, according to the LTP anyway. I think it'll be higher. I think some people, especially those on fixed and low incomes, will simply not be able to survive financially. How this might pan out is uncertain. It may well result in people moving away from Hawke's Bay altogether.
Can I ask you to speak to the entity and the regional model of a regional CCO, please?
I've just listened to a large dissertation about that didn't directly address this. I am using the same
Directed
approach.
water.
We're talking about water and the cost of it. We were given three options: council-controlled business unit, a Hastings Water Services CCO, a Hawke's Bay Regional Water Services CCO. We have chosen to go with the regional operation. I think we've made the wrong choice. Sure, some public admissions overwhelmingly supported the regional model, but this was the very intention of our public consultation process, which in my opinion failed to reveal all the risks involved and the ones left and the costs left behind. We've made it look as though somehow this is the cheapest option, though in my opinion it is just an illusion. History shows when new organisations are established.
Point of order, Your Worship. I think that's really unfair and incorrect to be saying that we have made this recommendation to be the most rewarding financially. It's just simply incorrect.
I am reflecting the submissions, not all the submissions, but some of them.
Excuse me,
Thank
Councillor
you.
Nixon.
Yep.
I will decide whether I accept the point of order.
That's
Thank
fine.
you.
Yes.
We are talking about a water service delivery model under the local and on the central government reform of local waters done well. Could you keep your conversation and your debate to the water services delivery model and as in focus, please?
Okay, well, history shows when new organisations are established, the outcomes often fail to keep to budget or meet expectations. We will effectively be creating almost another level of local government. Just some of the bits that I picked up of the information. We'll have a transitional governance group, a project steering group, an establishment board, shareholders representative forum. This is multiple areas of additional cost. There will be a board of independent directors, paid goodness know how much because they couldn't tell us the other day. Based on the performance of some of our public companies, I really have grave doubts about the value of some of the directors that are floating around. There will be consultants galore and other hangers-on. Then there is the issue of debt. I keep hearing we'll be getting debt off our books. The fact is the debt will not be removed from the ratepayers' books. It will only be removed from the council's books. I believe somehow we're going to end up paying for other councils to bring their water services up to compliance levels with price harmonisation. I hear...
Point of order, Your Worship. That's been covered in debate and clarified with staff. Thank you.
There
Price harmonisation has been covered in the heads of agreement and we've heard from our community about it. Councillor Nixon, I'm not going to let grandstanding just occur today.
This is not grandstanding, this is a discussion.
I'm asking you to speak on whether or not you support a regional CCO to deliver the local waters done well, or you prefer another model. But these are the recommendations we have, and I ask you to speak for or against.
Okay, well, since I've been shut down, I will not be supporting the proposal. My preference is that we go for a council-controlled business unit, and I foreshadow a motion to that effect if this fails.
Thank you, Councillor Nixon. Councillor Kerr.
After that feels like very blatant electioneering, I wish to very simply say I speak in support of these recommendations. What we're trying to achieve is clearly the best outcome for our community, financially and efficiently. And I think it is very harsh to be painting directors as incompetent. We need to be looking ahead to the next generation and making sure that the decisions we make today are the best for them. We can't afford to do it as a council-owned business unit. We clearly know that. We will struggle to do it alone as a council-controlled organisation, separate to us. The only effective solution, as has been discussed today and wisely supported by other councillors, is the regional model. So thank you, Worship. I 100% endorse the recommendations, including the amendments that have been brought forward by my colleagues, as a really robust and sound decision for the future. Thank you.
Councillor Kerr. Councillor Dixon.
Thank you, Worship. I too support the recommendations as they've been presented. But could I also thank the staff for the wonderful amount of work they've put in behind the scenes. It's been absolutely huge. We've all been very well informed. There's been no stone left unturned as far as I'm concerned, so well done. What this is going to enable us to do, if we pass this, is retain quality staff and attract new staff. Yeah. And it may well be the forerunner for amalgamation of Hawke's Bay in the future, and that can only be good. I support the recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Dixon. Right, a reply by the mover and seconder, please.
Your Worship, once again I say the regional model to me, from the evidence and the endless workshops we've had, beautifully presented I might add. To go to our own CCO, I'm not sure what papers Councillor Nixon was reading, but I'm sure the ratepayers do not want to be shackled with a higher cost model at the sake of one which is more efficient.
Thank you, Councillor Fowler. Councillor Sholem.
Thank you, Worship. Also speaking in favour again of the regional CCO. I hark back to my original reasoning when we went out with the draft for consultation. This will ensure appropriate investment. It will ensure we capture skilled staff. It will ensure that we have the lowest possible increases for our community overall, recognising that water will cost more going forward no matter what. This also had wide-reaching community support, and we would be remiss as governors and elected members to ignore that. I'd also like to recognise that this is a significant shift for local government and a significant step forward for our region. This is collaboration on a level we've never seen before, and I am proud of every single council who's decided to work together for the betterment of our community.
Thank you, Councillor Sholem. Just a comment from me. Everyone's pretty much covered everything, but you know, we were all in a place throughout various parts of looking at different models, different entities, what was most affordable, which would be most effective, could we manage on our own, could we borrow the sufficient funding we needed for future standards. And we've been on this journey for the last 3 years, well, since Local Waters Done Well legislation was introduced, on how we could make this work best for our people. And we have looked at all those iterations that have been discussed today, and we have delivered very well for our community, but could we do that in the future? We don't have the modelling that would suggest that is the case. That is what is most important for us to understand. What does the future look like? How are we going to meet those standards, and how are we going to afford to meet those standards with a very, very stretched balance sheet from our recovery? So today it is a big decision for us. It is a decision that we've had to work through very, very carefully. We've considered a council business unit continuing what we've done. We've considered a local council CCO, and we've considered a regional CCO, and it hasn't been easy. But what we have seen throughout this time is very, very strong modelling. We're not there yet. We're quite unsure of how it is all going to work, but we know that the effectiveness of a different efficient model with working together has a place for the future for our region. And I support the work that has been done. I support the modelling, and it's a case in point that has shown us quite clearly how we will manage to deliver the best water services we can for our community in the future. So I have our recommendations in front of us, and we have a mover, Councillor Sholem, seconder, Councillor Fowler. There's no further comments or debate. I will put those recommendations. I'd like a show of hands, please. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. And those against? No. Thank you. We'll record your vote. Yes, thank you. Great. Thank you very much. And thank you to our members of the community who have joined us today, that our vote is carried. Thank you to our staff, and thank you to everybody who's worked on this huge piece of legislation that we have navigated our way through to find the best way forward. That concludes item 5. I think we might take a cup of tea. That would be a good idea. Well, I now adjourn the meeting for a cup of tea.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. No, what it is about is I've been here and there's been a recommendation with the word and in it.
Okay.
Jessica,
Sorry, can I just ask you to sit down, Simon and Henry? Could I just ask you to sit down? We'll just take the item to consider PX, whether we move into a public excluded part of this agenda. This is the public part, and I'll ask Mr. Cameron if he could take us through this part, please. Thank you. And you're very welcome to join us for a cup of tea.
Yes, through Madam Chair, there's 2 agenda items recommended to be heard in public exclusion on today's agenda. Both items refer to council being in situations at different stages of commercial negotiations with external parties. They both traverse commercially sensitive information, both of council and of external parties, to protect council's negotiation position ongoing. It's recommended both matters be considered in public exclusion.
Any questions to Mr. Cameron?
happy to move, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Kerr. Councillor Butto, second. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any against? Thank you. That matter is carried. And thank you for our community for joining us today. This is a substantial decision and a big transformational change. And thank you for being on this journey with us, for your submissions, for hearing your views and your voice. Kia ora.